Hi, this is an interview for Edularity. Today we are with Dr. Brian. What about socialization? We didn't grasp on
No,
that.
we didn't do that. We call that here
Yeah.
the S question.
Yes,
The
I
S
know.
question. Yeah. For me, it's now as a researcher, as a educator, as a person who's been around many children for many years. I used to play with children and take them on field trips back when I was in high school. I used to do that. I like teaching children. But it's almost silly that anybody asks that question. But the reason people ask the question, what about socialization, is that we who live today have only known institutionalization.
Exactly.
That's what we know.
Exactly.
I'm guessing you were institutionalized.
Yeah.
I was institutionalized.
Yeah.
Our parents, 5, 6 generations were institutionalized. And I think we just have to say that. I was institutionalized. That's what I know. They put me with this group of children, plus or minus 5 months my age, for 12 years, 9 months per year. And so we tend to think that's normal. And I think human nature is normal's good. We don't stop to ask, is normal really the best? And so it is a good question because everybody wants to know. And as soon as we hear that question, we have to ask ourselves, what is the definition of socialization? Does socialization mean that by the time Billy is 19, he knows how to hold a beer and sip his beer at a party or at a game of football? Or does socialization mean Susie is kind to people, she's thoughtful of her neighbors, she can speak up for herself, she does not have to go along with the crowd? Does it mean that Johnny is an active citizen? He votes, he writes letters to the editor, maybe he's helpful in the neighborhood. What does it mean? We have to ask, what does it mean? So researchers have looked at all those different pieces in the homeschool world because they want to know. And so far, in almost all the studies, home-educated children, no matter how you measure them, are doing as well and often better than those who went to public and private schools. That's the simple answer. The researchers have looked at self-concept, self-esteem, family cohesion, activity, civic engagement, community service, voting, all these kinds of things when they become adults. And the vast majority of the research says they're doing well. They're active, engaged citizens. One study said none of them were on welfare. They were not living off the government taxation. They were entrepreneurial on average. Some of it overlaps with the research I talked about earlier about adults and how they're doing. One study was one of the most fascinating ones. It's one of the older ones, but the researcher was very careful. He took solely homeschooled children and solely institutionalized children, put them in play groups behind a one-way glass, and then he had videotapes running, and then he had research assistants who did not know who was homeschooled and who was private schooled, did all the checklists, and he said, in most ways they're the same. The only statistically significant difference was those who were not homeschooled had more problem behaviors, acting out too aggressively, and the home-educated children knew better how to play together without being too aggressive. That was the only statistically significant difference.
Interesting.
Very interesting. They knew better how to get along without being aggressive.
What I say is that, especially middle and high school, kids tend to be so aware of what they are going to say and even afraid of falling into the scrutiny of their peers. So, because they have been trained to do that. And that is not what you often see in home-based education kids.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the name of the book right now. Susanna Sheffer wrote a book years ago where she was talking about research on girls, adolescent girls in normal society, referring to major research universities and a little bit of a feminist kind of philosophy about girls losing their voice and just succumbing to cultural pressure. And when she examined the home-educated children, girls, they were not losing their voice like those who were in institutional school.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's a fascinating... what was the name of that book? A Sense of Self. I think it's A Sense of Self by Susanna Sheffer. It's a very fascinating book. Yeah. And I think most people who were institutionalized, like you and me, who went to public schools and even private schools, we realize there was huge peer pressure to adapt and become like everybody else. You didn't want to stand out. You're worried about whether you had the right complexion. You're worried about whether you have the right clothes. You're worried about whether you say the right words. You're worried about whether you have the right shoes. And you want to blend in because you don't want people to pick on you, which leads us to bullying.
Are you listening?